When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, it's still hungry. User, FRNomore316. Posted, November 22nd, 1996.
I was ordained in the spring of 1954, fresh out of seminary and full of the kind of certainty only the young possess. I believed that faith was a light bright enough to drive out anything. The bishop assigned me to St. Augustine Parish, a brick church sitting lonely among cornfields south of Des Moines. The pastor there was an older man named Father Grady, a wiry Irishman with a face like carved oak and hands that never stopped shaking from too much coffee and too little sleep. My first month there, I mostly did hospital visits and catechism. Grady did everything else. He'd been there 20 years and had seen more sorrow than most men could stand. Farm accidents, drownings, suicides. The kind of things that make faith both stronger and quieter. Then came the Barlow case. It was late June when a sheriff's deputy came knocking at the rectory door. He said the Barlow family, good parishioners who lived out past the river, needed a priest. Their youngest boy, Tommy, had fallen ill in a way the doctors couldn't explain. I remember the drive out there, a humid dusk, the corn high, the insects screaming so loud it was like static in your ears. The Barlow farmhouse sat half sunk in shadow, its porch light flickering. Mr. Barlow met us at the gate. He was pale, trembling, smelled of sweat and fear. "He's not my boy anymore," he kept saying. "It's something else." Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of kerosene and sickness. Mrs. Barlow sat at the kitchen table, rosary wound tight in her fingers. Upstairs, we heard the boy moving, shuffling, scraping, the sound of a bed frame hitting the wall. Father Grady told me to stay behind him. "We watch first," he whispered, "and judge later." Tommy couldn't have been more than 10. He sat curled in the corner of his room, knees to his chest, head twitching toward us in quick jerks. His eyes were open too wide, the whites showing all the way around. His lips were split from biting. The sheets on his bed were torn and damp with something dark. The moment Father Grady entered, the boy started to laugh. Not a child's laugh, too low, too deliberate. "Good evening, Father," it said, though the boy's lips barely moved. Grady's hand went to the crucifix around his neck. "What's your name, child?" The voice answered, "The same as yours." I still remember how cold that room felt. The windows were shut tight, yet every breath came out like fog. I wanted to run. Instead, I clutched my stole like a shield. We spent the night in prayer. The bishop gave permission by phone at dawn. By sunset, we began the rite. Grady knelt at the foot of the bed, and I followed, my voice shaking. The boy thrashed, his limbs bending wrong under him, like the joints had loosened. His tongue lolled from his mouth, black at the edges, the room filled with a stench like burnt meat, and then his skin began to move. It started at the collarbone, just a ripple, subtle at first, like something crawling beneath the flesh. It traveled down his chest, over his ribs, across his stomach. The boy screamed, and the sound didn't come from his throat. It came from everywhere. His skin split in thin red lines that opened and closed like mouths gasping for air. I stumbled backward. Grady didn't move. He pressed the crucifix to the boy's forehead. Steam rose where metal met skin. "In the name of Christ, be gone," he shouted. The thing inside Tommy laughed again, louder now. The bed shook, the walls thudded in rhythm with the boy's pulse. Every lamp in the house went out at once, leaving only the candlelight trembling against the walls. When I looked again, Grady's crucifix was gone, swallowed into the boy's flesh. His chest swelled, bulged outward, and for a moment I saw the shape of the cross beneath the skin glowing faintly like embers. Then it burst through, slick and red, landing at Grady's knees. Grady didn't stop. His voice rose above the screams, Latin words turning to raw sound. I grabbed the bucket of holy water and threw it. The moment it hit, the skin hissed, split wider, and what came out wasn't blood. It was thicker, gray, fibrous, like wet ash. Mrs. Barlow fainted. Mr. Barlow was sobbing, begging us to stop. Grady kept praying, louder, until the boy convulsed and collapsed. When it was over, Tommy lay still. His eyes were clear again. He whispered something so quiet I had to kneel to hear it. He said, "He's still hungry." Then he stopped breathing. We buried him the next morning in the parish cemetery. The coroner's report said heart failure due to fever. Nobody mentioned the marks that never stopped bleeding or how the crucifix had burned through the shroud. Grady was never the same. He stopped saying Mass for a while, just sat in the rectory study with a bottle and the windows open even in the cold. Sometimes I'd hear him whispering in Latin under his breath, the same phrases from that night. A month later, he called me upstairs. He said his hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I looked, the skin on his palms was cracking, splitting in the same pattern that had moved across that boy's chest. The wounds wept clear fluid that smelled faintly of sulfur. He laughed when he saw my face. "He passed it to me," he said. "It needs someone to carry it." Within the year, Father Grady was dead. The doctors said infection, but I know better. I've carried the scars of that night for over 40 years. Literally, 2 thin lines across my own wrists that opened the day after we buried him and never quite healed. When it rains, they burn. Sometimes I smell that same sweetness in the air, like wet sugar cooking on a stove. Last week, One of the altar boys at my parish came down with a fever. His mother says he keeps scratching at his chest in his sleep. I went to see him yesterday. When I blessed the house with holy water, the radio in the kitchen turned itself on and whispered in Latin. It's still hungry, and I don't think I have the strength to do this again.
Subject, chain mail. User, hellmail317. Posted, September 4th, 1998.
I got a letter in the mail last Monday. Nothing fancy, just a plain white envelope with my name scribbled across the front in blue ink. Kevin Barnes, Linden State College, Box 317. No return address, no typed label, just handwriting that leaned uphill like the person was rushing. The envelope was soft, smudged at the corners, like it had been handled too many times. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, yellowed a little around the edges, covered in handwriting that looked tight and nervous. It was a chain letter. I hadn't seen one of those in years. You remember them, right? The ones that promised good luck if you made 10 copies and sent them out, bad luck if you didn't. This one talked about a woman who died in 1923, how she'd cursed her lovers, how she still walked the earth waiting for the letter to be broken. It said, "Break the chain and you will lose everything you love." The rest was rambling nonsense and weird doodles, little crosses and spirals that ran down the sides like someone trying to fill every inch of space. I laughed when I read it, tossed it right in the trash under my desk. I'm not the superstitious type. The next morning, I stopped by the campus mailroom between classes, and sitting in my box was another letter. Same cheap envelope, same handwriting, but this one had a postmark. My hometown, 2 hours away. Inside, same message, except for one line. The first one had said, "You're the 47th to receive this." This one said, "You were the 48th." That gave me a chill I didn't want to admit. I tried to brush it off, telling myself maybe someone back home was playing a prank. And when I called my mom that night, I half joked about it, asked if she'd sent anything weird. She laughed and said no, only the care package last week. We talked about her garden, the neighbor's dog, the usual stuff. But Wednesday, I got another. Same handwriting, this time postmarked from the same town as the college. No return address, just my name, my box number. Inside it said, "You're the 49th." That's when I started keeping them. I lined them up on my desk under the lamp. Each one had a faint smell, dusty, like the paper stored too long in a damp basement. Thursday night, I finally told my roommate Alan about it. He thought it was hilarious, said it was probably one of the guys on our floor trying to freak me out. I asked who, but he just shrugged. Friday morning, there was another one. Postmark was smudged this time, but the ink on the letter was darker, wetter, almost like it had been written with an old fountain pen. The handwriting was shaking now, letters jittering across the page. It said, "You are the 50th." I went down to the campus post office to ask about it. The woman behind the counter looked half asleep until I showed her the envelope. Her eyes narrowed and she said she'd seen a few like that come through. When I asked if she could tell where it came from, She shook her head. Could have been dropped off here, she said. Could have been forwarded. Then, under her breath, she added, "The paper smells old, doesn't it?" That night, we had a few beers in the dorm lounge. I told everyone about my growing collection. Rick said I should burn them before I ended up cursed. So after midnight, we went out behind the dorm where there's an old oil drum they used for bonfires. I tossed all 4 letters in, and the fire hissed once and went quiet. For a second, the flames turned this odd green color, like copper burning. I remember the smell, sweet like scorched sugar. When I came back to my room, the hallway light was on. Someone had slid an envelope under my door. Same handwriting, same cheap paper. Inside, it said, "You are the 51st. Only this one wasn't handwritten. It was typed. The ink looked faint, uneven, like an old ribbon that needed changing. At the bottom, below the usual curse line, was something new. "You shouldn't have burned them." I stared at that sentence for a long time, trying to figure out how they'd known. Maybe Alan had followed me outside and watched. Maybe one of the other guys had fished them out before they burned. I checked the trash can, the hallway, even asked the night clerk if anyone had come by. Nobody had. I sat up most of the night, staring at that letter. Around 3 in the morning, I started comparing the handwriting on the envelopes. The loops on the G's, the slant of the E's, the spacing. It was my handwriting, not just similar, identical. Saturday morning, I tried to call home again. No answer. The line just rang and rang. My mom never lets the phone ring like that. I just hung up, tried again that afternoon. Busy signal. I left a message on the machine just in case, but when I played it back to make sure it recorded, there was a second voice behind mine. Something faint, whispering. Couldn't have been feedback, but it didn't sound like static. It sounded like someone breathing close to the receiver. By that night, I was checking the mail every few hours. I told myself I just wanted to prove it was a prank, that it had stopped if I ignored it. When I opened my box around 10, there wasn't a single letter inside. I actually felt relieved. Then, the clerk called out from the back, said there was one more crate to sort. She wheeled it out, set it on the counter, and said my name was on the side. In black marker, across the plastic bin, it said Barnes, 317. The crate was full of envelopes, dozens, maybe more. I didn't open any. I carried the crate back to my room, locked the door, and sat on the bed. For a while, nothing happened. Then I heard it. A soft rustling, like someone shuffling paper inside the crate. I tried to tell myself it was just the air vent, but it wasn't. The room was still. The only sound was that faint shifting, like something alive in there, moving beneath the envelopes. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed I was back home, standing by our mailbox on the corner, the one that leans to the side. I'd open it, and inside there'd be another envelope, my name written in that same shaky hand. When I tried to tear it open, it'd fall apart like wet paper, and the letters inside would spill out like ash. When I woke up Sunday morning, the crate was empty. Every single envelope was gone. I didn't hear anyone come in, didn't see anyone leave. The latch on the door was still set, but there on my desk, was a single new envelope. This one wasn't postmarked, just my name. Inside was a single sheet of paper, blank except for one line at the bottom. You are the 52nd. I don't know what it means. I don't know who came before me or what happens when it reaches whatever number it's counting toward. I just know I cannot stop thinking about my mom not answering the phone. I tried calling again this morning, and now the line doesn't even ring. It just clicks, then goes dead. I went downstairs to the payphone in the lobby to see if maybe the dorm lines were just out, but when I picked up the receiver there, I could hear a faint scratching noise on the other end. It wasn't static. It sounded like a pen moving across paper.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.